Today I will tell you about Tython, the homeworld of the Jedi Order from the Star Wars expanded universe. Tython was a terrestrial planet located in the eponymous system of the galactic core. It was the fifth planet orbiting the star Tythos, situated less than 160 million kilometers from its star. A day on Tython lasted 31.5 hours. Tython had standard gravity and a Type 1 atmosphere, which made it breathable for most species of the galaxy. Tython's two moons, Ashla and Bogan, were in stark contrast to each other. Bogan had a dark hue, while Ashla shimmered with a light glow. The Jedi felt the influence of both moons and the balance center between them. During those times, Tython's orbit also housed orbital boundary stations located 30,000 kilometers away from the planet. Space and hyperspace anomalies around the Tython system made it nearly inaccessible. Thus, open hyperspace routes lost their stability, becoming unsuitable for travel. In ancient times, Tython was remarkable for its environment, both living and inorganic, exhibiting a high sensitivity to the Force, and interactions between individual local beings with the light and dark sides of the Force left their imprint on Tython. The Great Force here was like an element permeating the entire planet, and imbalances between light and dark led to geological cataclysms, earthquakes, and force storms, which ravaged Tython's surface. Tython possessed a temperate climate and was stunning in its geographical diversity. Several continents, separated by seas and oceans, were adorned with rivers, plains, hills, mountains, and canyons. In one of these oceans, named the Deep Ocean, stood the Jedi healing temple Mahara-Kesh, while from the summit of a giant cliff where the Temple of Balance, Akar-Kesh, was founded, waterfalls cascaded down, feeding the water bodies at its base. The secluded islands washed by these waters served as ideal spots for meditation. On the coast of the Masara continent, which was washed by the Therian Ocean from the north, stood the Bodhi Arts Temple, surrounded by border forests. To the northwest, 800 kilometers away, lay the continent of Thyr, with its rocky plains and extensive forests known as the Stark Forests, whose trees gathered water from the air and stored it in special dense pods hanging from branches, utilized by occasional travelers to quench their thirst. Beyond the forest was the silent desert, known for its sound-absorbing sand. In its underground caves, the Temple of Qigong-Kesh was built, where Jedi refined their telepathic and sensory skills in the desert's silence. To the south of Tyra lay the tumultuous continent known as Kato Zakar, whose heart was constantly shaken by numerous volcanoes and earthquakes. From the northern coast stretched the cold and harsh Strafe Plains, beyond which a giant ice ridge spanned across the entire continent. On the slope of one of the snow-covered cliffs, the martial arts temple Stav-Kesh was erected. The eastern part of Kato Zakar was covered with mushroom forests, swamps, and sand dunes leading down to the waters. On the eastern coast lay the Forbidden Harbor, followed by the Moon Chanel. Beyond the Moon Chanel, past 7 islands, was Tals, the largest continent of Tython. There were the Gorge and the Chasm, 2 multi-kilometer planetary rifts considered the most mysterious places on Tython. In the Gorge, where creatures born of the dark side dwelt, lay the dangerous abyss of Ru, capable of plunging a weak-willed traveler into darkness. The Chasm, in turn, delved into the planetary crust 600 kilometers west of the Gorge. In the depths of the Chasm, there was an area causing intense mental pressure, and above the very chasm, the science temple Anil-Kesh was erected. To the south of the gorge stretched vast plains covered with low vegetation. Due to strong winds, beyond the plains lay the Red Desert, reaching directly to the continent's coast. At a distance of 80 kilometers from the northern border of the desert, there was an ancient city which, by the time of the Jedi, was already half buried in sand. To the northwest of the gorge, 2 Jedi temples were erected. Above the crater of an active volcano, the Jedi forge Vur-Tepe was founded, and nearby stood the knowledge temple Kaleth. The surrounding area was predominantly hilly and forested. The Tythos River and the mountain range of the same name passed nearby, where the Force manifested itself particularly distinctly on the planet. By the time of the Great Galactic War, its forests had been burned by a barbarian tribe, the Flesh Raiders, sowing the land with ashes and the bones of the animals they caught. To the north of the range were the Tythonian nodes and a system of densely forested valleys, To the northwest, near the ruins of Calith, the Jedi Order, which had rediscovered Tython after the Great Galactic War, built a new temple for itself. Additionally, the Jedi constructed another enclave, a sanctuary for masters. 1,500 years later, storms turned the surface of Tython into barren, ashen plains, and the lush forests that once adorned the planet disappeared. Tython, devastated by a catastrophe, was a paradise with lush forests covering its continents. These forests were dominated by majestic act trees as well as fruit-bearing grainberry trees that provided edible fruits for humans. Tython was home to many diverse species of animals. Some Tythonian animals perceived the surrounding world through the Force. However, their connection to this mysterious energy was passive, and they could not harness the power of the Force. If creatures such as Shay or raptors were later domesticated and used as mounts, and weave birds, with their ability to weave nests from golden threads, brought new colors to the local beauty, many other species of Tythonian wildlife were considered quite dangerous. Thus, the hook hawk, possessing hooked beaks and sharp claws, lured their prey with hypnotic singing and then ruthlessly attacked. In the Silence Desert lived manklebirds, pendlebirds, and silic lizard, rare but deadly six-legged creatures that fed on energy from the sands and attacked travelers at night. Flame tiger, twice the height of humans, incinerated their enemies with flames from their limbs and mouths, thereby terrorizing Katozaka. The Moon Channel was home to small but ferocious jellyfish and sea hydras. In the rift halls, especially in the abyss of Ru, lurked eerie and dangerous creatures, most of which remained unstudied and unnamed. Among them were sarls, giant purple worms whose three-lobed mouths were lined with countless razor-sharp teeth. The Red Desert and the Old City became a haven for blood wasps, semi-mythical flying creatures that fed on warm blood. Apart from the bloodthirsty blood wasps, the skies were filled with peaceful creatures. Snow-white birds and beings resembling giant dragonflies inhabited the islands near Arkar-Kesh. There were also species whose meat was consumed as food, such as rumbat or wanderer. After the Jedi departed from Tython, Terentatex, dark side spawn attracted to force-rich flesh, appeared. Hundreds of years later, the lands around the Calith Temple became populated by Goids, hoofed quadrupedal creatures that were not prone to aggression but could defend themselves with powerful jaws and paws. Geeds and herd mammals were found on other planets as well, but their homeland was most certainly Tython. The Tythos River Valley became home to Garants, four-legged predatory reptiles hunting in families and reproducing at an incredible rate. Mankakats, introduced from Alderaan, quickly adapted and thrived in the new ecosystem. In ancient times, tens of thousands of years before the arrival of the travelers, a mysterious race lived on Tython, about which almost nothing is known. It was these vanished beings who built the complex of structures in the south of the Tal continent, known as the Old City, with a pyramid-shaped temple at its center. In those times when galactic history was just beginning, the Tython system was visited by the Gree, a short and intelligent species known for their space travels. Despite the fact that the architecture of the Old City and its giant chambers were not designed for the Gree, they were mistakenly credited with its construction. However, in truth, the Gree only inhabited the Old City for a short period before leaving Tython. Nevertheless, legends spoke of the existence beneath the Old City of so-called hypergates, interstellar transport devices through which the Gree became some of the first space travelers. Later, the Qua, a reptilian race from Dathomir, also known for their exploration of other worlds, arrived on the planet. The Qua's own devices, known as infinity gates, allowed them to connect planets with one another, and one such gate was installed on Tython, making it the Qua's new home. However, in the twilight of their existence, the Qua entered into conflict with the aggressive Rakata race. To prevent the infinite empire of the Rakata from seizing the valuable transport network, the Qua deliberately deactivated the entire system of infinity gates. Most of the Qua returned to their homeland, but some remained on Tython, hiding one of these gates inside a planetary fissure and sealing access to it with a mental barrier. The last surviving Qua, named Anang, created a holocron into which he placed his knowledge. Thus, the holocron contained an emergency mechanism ready to activate in the event of the Rakata appearing on Tython, awakening the Thoyor. After the disappearance of the Qua, and millennia later in the year 36,453 BBY. 9 gigantic octahedral ships known as Tho-Yor gathered Force-sensitive philosophers, seers, scientists, and warriors from various races across the galaxy. The Tho-Yor transported their passengers to Tython, where, united in the Force, the settlers became one people, henceforth possessing a great mission: to study the mysterious energy and master the abilities it granted. Observing the Force-rich Tython and its moons, Ashla and Bogan, the settlers developed their own philosophy centered on the balance between light and dark. Disruption of this balance led to storms and earthquakes shaking the planet. Thus, the Order of the Jedi was founded, dedicating itself to studying the Force and maintaining balance in the Tython system. Near each of the Tho-Yor, which had moved to various continents, the Jedi occupied the land, built temples and cities, fought local animals, or tamed them. Due to the surrounding cosmic anomalies, the Great Tythonian civilization developed in isolation from the known part of the galaxy for over 10,000 years, and only legends of the Rakata spoke of a force-rich planet where the main infinity gates of the Qua were located. However, although the Infinite Empire explored the galaxy's deep core, Tython remained inaccessible to the Rakata for a time. Among the mountain peaks of Tython, the Jedi spent time in meditation, attaining enlightenment. Over time, they understood that their home, responding to balanced disruptions with cataclysms, was dangerous for those not sensitive to the Force. Such individuals increased with each generation, and even the Jedi could not protect them. A millennium after the founding of the Order, the city of Aurum was destroyed as a result of a cataclysm. Non-Jedi and Tythonese were forced to leave the planet, colonizing other worlds within the system. The Jedi, however, remained on Tython, their numbers growing since all Force-sensitive beings born beyond the planet were sent to the Order. Learning the ways of the Jedi, these adepts would undertake the ritual Great Journey, during which they visited all 9 great temples built near the Tho-Yor. Within these temples, travelers would gain new knowledge and skills. The diverse environment of Tython not only allowed the Jedi to hone their skills by battling predators, but also deepened their connection to the planet, strengthening their inner balance. However, not all members of the Order completed their journey. Some were unprepared for the dangers of Tython, while others lost their balance and connection to the Force, abandoning their training and leaving the planet. Trained Jedi, who had walked the path of either the dark or the light side of the Force, were exiled to the moons of Bogan or Ashla, respectively, where these outcasts could meditate and restore their balance. The light of the Jedi Masters became the highest authority on Tython. At the request of the inhabitants of the colonized worlds, or by the will of the Force, the Jedi observed the happenings on these planets and intervened in the life of the colony when necessary. Over 10,000 years of its existence, the Jedi transformed into the mysterious heroes of legends. They were respected, but at the same time there was a growing sense of unease and occasional animosity toward the Jedi and their interference in the affairs of other peoples among the colony inhabitants. Some non-Tythonese despised the Jedi for their isolationist way of life, which the Order also extended to the entire system, counteracting attempts at space exploration beyond their own star system. Nevertheless, so-called sleeper ships were still dispatched to other worlds of the deep core. The most radical opponents of this approach were the Stargazers, an extremist organization whose members sought to learn the ways of their ancestors, those who were taken from Tython for an unknown purpose, and those who were proof of the possibility of leaving the system and reaching the rest of the galaxy. Centrifugal tendencies were also evident within the Jedi Order itself. As knowledge of the Force grew, an increasing number of Jedi succumbed to the temptation to use its power for personal purposes. The growing dissatisfaction toward the Jedi among the colony inhabitants resulted in a bloody conflict, initiated by the ruler Queen Hadia. Seizing power on her planet, this despotic Twi'lek queen attempted to unite the entire Tython system under her rule. Refusing to submit to the Jedi and the will of the Force, Hadia gathered many non-Jedi under her banner and attempted to annihilate the Order. In the year 25805, BBY despot army invaded Tython and was close to success. But during the key battle at Calith, the Temple of the Order's knowledge, Hadia was treacherously slain by a Jedi ranger named Dagon Locke, and the Queen's army was defeated. However, the tension between the Tythonian Jedi and the inhabitants of other worlds did not dissipate, and the Order itself was significantly weakened, as many of its members perished in the war. Meanwhile, Dagon Locke and his fellow Jedi, Hawk Ryo, encouraged by their victory over the despot Queen Hadia, ventured into the abyss beneath the Anil Kesh Temple of Science. There they received a vision of a dark army armed with fiery blades. Struggling to escape the abyss, the scouts reported the vision to the Jedi Council, but the Masters did not believe them, resulting in Dagon Locke being exiled to Bogan. In 25,793 BBY, the Rakatan Predor Skalnas sought a planet infused with the Force within the galactic core from ancient legends. As the Rakata species began to lose their connection to the Force, Skalnas aimed to consume this sought-after world to rejuvenate his people and to acquire the coveted Qua Infinity Gates. When Skalnas's seeker named Trill sensed the desired planet through the Force but couldn't pinpoint its exact location, Skalnas summoned the more powerful seeker Zesh, who belonged to the Predor Tulkar. According to Rakatan customs, the right to conquest in such a case belonged to Tulkar. And when Zesh found Tython, he sent a mental projection there to study the planet and its inhabitants. Upon arriving in the system, Tulkar also felt the planet's force, but saw it merely as a source of new force-sensitive slaves which the Rakata used to power their ships. He was unaware that Skalnas had secretly enlisted Zesh, giving him a treacherous order. When the reconnaissance ship reached its target, Zesh was instructed to sabotage the vessel and kill his master. Zesh, following Skalnas's command, sabotaged Tulkar's ship from within, killing him, and barely managed to escape. Around this time on Tython, a sect of stargazers, obsessed with ancient legends, attempted to activate the hypergate beneath the old city, but the Jedi, fearing catastrophic consequences, thwarted their plans. During the operation, the sect's leader, Dalian Brock, was killed in the old city by his sister Lanori. This event coincided with the crash of the Rakatan World Devourer, causing the mass death of all Force-sensitive slaves and Rakata on board, triggering a destructive force storm the likes of which the Jedi had not seen since the arrival of the Thoyor. Sensing the imbalance, the Jedi embarked on a search for its cause. Zesh was first found by 3 Jedi wanderers who had inadvertently caught his mental shadow shortly before the incident. In the heart of the canyon, a battle ensued between the 3 wanderers and Zesh, and although Sarl, who intervened in the fight, distracted the young Jedi, other members of the Order arrived to assist. At this time, the Force storm, intensifying with every minute, threatened to once again turn Tython into an enemy of the Jedi. The Temple Master, Anil Kesh, named Quan Jang, joined forces with other masters to subdue the storm, neutralizing not only Zesh, but also the rebellious planet. The Rakatan cell was captured by the Jedi, but due to sustained injuries could recount little about their masters. The arrival of Zesh disrupted the fragile balance of Tython, and the imprisoned cell was sent to Bogan, where he met Dagon Locke, with whom he eventually escaped from the moon. While a hunt was underway for the fugitives, Jedi Padawan Tasha Rio studied the remains of the passengers of the Devourer, and with the aid of the ancient Qua holocron found under Calith, she learned about the Rakata race. Simultaneously, as Dagon Locke received evidence of the truth of his vision related to the Dark Army, the Jedi Order became aware of the true nature of the newcomers and what was foreordained for Tython in the near future. The Forcehound Trill, who had arrived on Tython following Zesh, began preparations for the invasion of his master Skalnas's army, while the Jedi, not standing idle, also prepared for war. Utilizing Zesh's knowledge of Rakatan force sabers, lightsabers powered by the dark side, the Order began producing this weapon in the Forge Temple of Vur-Tepe on Tython. A year later, the Infinite Empire invaded the Tython system. But in the initial attempt, Skalnas's forces failed to capture the Jedi's homeland. After the Blind Seers and the ambush of the Tythonites were defeated on Ashla, the Empire launched a decisive offensive on Tython, and a massive army of Rakatan flesh raiders landed on the surface. The Jedi, drawing power from the dark side, fiercely defended their world, but this wrath birthed chaos, and Tython literally groaned in pain, reacting with force storms. Driven by a lust for conquest, the Rakatan Predor re-enslaved Zesh, and with him Dagon Lok, from whom Skalnas learned the location of the Quar Infinity Gates, hidden in the chasm beneath Anil Kesh after torturing him. While soldiers on both sides fought with force sabers, Skalnas and Zesh descended into the chasm unimpeded, for thanks to legends, the Predor of the Infinite Empire knew of the key that allowed passage through the mental barrier. In the chasm, Skalnas discovered the main Infinity Gates with which he intended to finally conquer the entire galaxy. But following him to the gates were two pathfinders, Dagon Lok and Zesh's beloved Shay Koda, who managed to convince Zesh to return to the Jedi. As Zesh killed his former master, Tasha Rio activated the Quar holocron of Anen, initiating the emergency mechanism and thereby awakening the Tho Yor. The ancient secret weapon destroyed the invading army and the Infinity Gates, and Tasha Rio, sacrificing herself for victory, learned the true purpose of the Tho Yor. Although the invaders were expelled from the system, the balance of the Force on the planet Tython and within the Jedi Order was irrevocably disrupted, not least due to the Force sabers fueled solely by the dark side of the Force. Supporters of Dagon Lok, who commanded the Jedi army, refused to lay down their arms, citing the presence of unvanquished soldiers of the Infinite Empire on Tython. Thus, after the war with the Outsiders, the conflict within the Jedi Order escalated into a feud between the followers of light and darkness, and the paths of balance were forgotten. For nearly a decade, Force adepts fought each other until the adherents of the dark side were defeated, and from the ashes of the Force wars arose a new organization. Several masters, the surviving champions of the light, gathered in the Tython cave to meditate and plan for the future. Their efforts culminated in the creation of the Jedi Order, with the founding masters forming the first Jedi Council. However, even in this new beginning, the shadow of Bogan was not absent. One of the Order's founders, Rajivari, who had led the Jedi during the invasion of the Infinite Empire, fell to the dark side. He and his followers, whom Rajivari called the true Dark Children of Tython, started a rebellion, attempting to purge the newly formed Order. However, ultimately the rebels were defeated and retreated to the Temple of Knowledge on Kaleth, where they were finally vanquished. In the end, the Jedi realized that the Great Force, not confined to the Tython system, permeated the entire galaxy. The Order's homeworld, however, suffered greatly and was devastated by a series of wars. The Force Wars disrupted the balance, causing catastrophic events that irreparably damaged the civilization within the Tython system. Rajivari's treachery in these events convinced the Jedi that Tython was forever consumed by the dark side and was dangerous for its inhabitants. The Order left Tython and embarked on a journey across the galaxy in search of a new home, and soon the Jedi found it on the planet Ossus, many parsecs from the deep core. Remembering the trials on Tython where they had to fight the darkness, the Jedi made a fateful decision to protect the discovered worlds from similar threats. Defining the light and dark sides of the Force, the early Jedi continued to refer to them by the names of Tython's moons. Although Tython's location was forgotten after the Jedi's departure, other peoples appeared around the semi-ruined Kaleth, driven by a desire to restore Tython's former glory. They attempted to colonize the planet, and since then, each subsequent government of Tython has aimed to return Kaleth to its former splendor. Two rulers in particular left their mark on history. The mighty Lord Maravada the Silent, whose reign was marked by peace and prosperity, and his successor Ava Marivash, who waged incessant wars and built monuments in honor of his people. Despite their differences in ruling methods and ideals, neither ruler managed to restore Kaleth to its former glory, and the city remained in ruins. The legacy of both rulers was recorded in the Chamber of Speeches beneath Kaleth. After the formation of the Galactic Republic, the desolate Tython, populated for millennia solely by bloodthirsty flesh-eaters and battle droids left by the Jedi to guard their temples, was formally considered part of the Republic at least until the time of Pius Dea, which came around 11,987 BBY. It was believed that during the Great Sith War, the Brotherhood of Exar Kun conducted horrifying alchemical experiments on Tython, resulting in monstrous Terran Tateks, whose preferred prey were Force users. Notably, these monsters could have been distant descendants of Tyrantus, bred by the Jedi Master Quan Jiang during the wars with the Hadia. Tyrantatex posed a significant threat to the Jedi, operating throughout the galaxy, and thus, with the end of the war, the Jedi Council, which had relocated to Coruscant, organized the Great Hunt in 3993 BBY, aimed at eradicating all Sith alchemy-born creatures. As part of this campaign, 3 Jedi hunters, Duron Keldroma, Shayla Nur, and Gunhan Saresh, arrived on Tython, cleansing the planet of the formidable Tyrantatex. 3 centuries later, a new dark force emerged in the galaxy in the form of the revitalized Sith Empire, and its treacherous attack on Coruscant and the destruction of the Jedi Temple drove the already diminished Order to the brink of extinction once more. 2 years later, in 3651 BBY, Jedi Knight Satele Shan, a descendant of the legendary Revan, led by the Call of the Force, discovered the path to the long-lost homeland of the Jedi Order. The Republic refused to rebuild the temple on Coruscant, leading the Jedi Council, which now included Satele, to decide on relocation to Tython. Jedi scouts embarked on numerous expeditions exploring the corners of Tython and studying its environmental influences. The surviving Jedi, led by Master Shan, returned to their roots, the relocation being conducted in secrecy to avoid attracting the attention of the Sith Empire amidst the burgeoning Cold War. Once isolated, Tython once again became part of the known galaxy. As they explored the planet, the Jedi discovered the ruins of ancient temples, populated by dangerous beasts and millennia-old droids. Since the Order needed a central residence to replace the one destroyed by the Sith on Coruscant, members of the High Council immersed themselves in deep meditation for a week, resulting in the final selection of the construction site. The new Jedi Temple was built northeast of Kalath, by a body of water near a small mountain range constructed from local wood and stone. Returning to their ancestral home, the Jedi intended to recover the lost knowledge and wisdom of their forebears, encouraged further by the beauty of Tython's waterfalls and valleys despite the lurking dangers. A significant contribution to the restoration of the archive was made by Master Nost Dural. In his youth, he was interested in history, including the period associated with Tython, and was then convinced that the planet had been destroyed by the Force Wars. However, brimming with hope, after the discovery of Tython, he enthusiastically engaged in its study. Every relic found, every trace of the Force Wars helped the Jedi learn from past mistakes and incorporate ancient training methods into the current preparation of young apprentices. Thanks to the lessons of Tython, a new generation of Jedi sincerely believed in the newly rediscovered purpose of the Order, to steadfastly resist the servants of the dark side. Far from political machinations and surrounded by wilderness, the Jedi once again found their role as beacons of light. But the Jedi were not the only settlers on Tython. As a group of Twi'lek pilgrims, refugees from various worlds, illegally arrived on the planet, whose matriarch chose the life-sustaining Tython as their new home. Initially, the pilgrims appealed to the Galactic Senate with a request to establish a colony on Tython, but they were refused due to the danger and unexplored nature of the planet. Thus, the Twi'lek settled on Tython independently, east of the Jedi Temple, and built a camp that eventually grew into the large village of Kalikori. The Jedi were surprised at how easily the refugees discovered their secret planet, but did not object to the presence of neighbors. However, when the indigenous Tythonians, flesh-eaters, began attacking the residents of Kalikori, and the matriarch's mother approached the Jedi for help, the Order refused, not wanting to get involved in local conflicts. Nevertheless, many Padawans secretly visited Kalikori to get acquainted with the pilgrims' customs, and also traversed the ritual mountain path to the matriarch's refuge to seek her blessing. In 3643, BBY, a Force-sensitive pilgrim, Nalan Raloch, made a sensational discovery. He found an untouched treasury of knowledge of Rajivari, a powerful Jedi whose spirit had rested for centuries in an ancient archive near the ruins of the Temple of Vur-Tepe. The fallen Jedi Master, whose spirit resided in the archive, masterfully manipulated Raloch, guiding him toward the dark path. Obsessed with revenge for the Jedi's refusal to help the pilgrims, The psychologically unstable Nalan burned with the idea of cleansing Tython of the Jedi Order. Using the Force, he caused the collapse of a Tython cave vault, nearly killing a young Jedi Padawan, who was later dispatched by the Masters to track down the crazed Ralok. During the search, the Padawan discovered the first historical lightsaber, presumably created based on the Rakatan Force saber. This finding led him to Rajivari's archive, where the young Jedi managed to convince the ancient Master's spirit to find peace in the Force. The Padawan then reached the ruins of Vur Tepe, where he not only assembled his own lightsaber but also neutralized Ralok. During this same period, ancient noeticons of the founding masters of the Jedi Order were found, and access to the Chamber of Speech beneath Kaleth was opened. A less pleasant surprise was the presence of two wild beasts, whose species had never inhabited Tython, dwelling near the forge, a large Gundark and a solitary Jurgoran. The Tythonian guides, in turn, were discovered on another Jedi planet, on the icy Ilum, located half the galaxy away from Tython. Amid the emergence of a new large-scale conflict in the galaxy, Tython had become the stage for a localized conflict. The Flesh Raiders, whose activity had previously been confined to the Tythos Ridge, increased the number of their camps, and their raids became ever more ferocious. They grew so bold that they began attacking Padawans on the training grounds of the Order. The situation was further complicated by the fact that the natives were also interested in the ancient structures, and inspired by the example of their ancestors, the Flesh Raiders, who had hostility towards the Jedi, began studying the Force. This culminated in the declaration of war against the Order and the Pilgrims, supported by the Dark Jedi Bengal Maw. Consumed by hatred for the Jedi for their failure to protect Coruscant, Maw directed the Flesh Raiders towards the Order's forward post north of the temple. In the hilly wooded area, the Jedi engaged in battle with the aggressive natives, securing victory thanks to the intervention of a young Padawan. It soon became clear that Tython had birthed a dangerous enemy, and to neutralize this threat, the gifted Padawan began taking active measures beyond the temple. He cleared the training ground of Flesh Raiders in the ancient shrine of Kaleth, destroyed the enemy command center, defended the pilgrims' village and fields, then fought through a ruined city swarming with Flesh Raiders and confronted Bengal Maw near the remnants of the forge. In the decisive duel, the Padawan defeated Maw, after which the Jedi Order completed the rout of the uprising, quelling the last pockets of resistance. Due to the actions of that same Jedi who thwarted the Flesh Raiders, a new danger soon loomed over Tython in the form of the Sith Lord Darth Angral, who intended to scorch the planet's surface using the superweapon Desolator. However, the Jedi, who had once provoked Angral's wrath, managed to defeat the Sith and save Tython, for which he was awarded the title of Hero of Tython. Yet 3 years later, the Sith Empire delivered a devastating blow to Tython. Under the command of Darth Arcus and his aide Lana Beniko, the Sith captured the Jedi Temple, pillaging the Order's invaluable archive. The assault inflicted severe damage on the temple and its surroundings, with many defenders falling in battle or being executed after capture. The Republic and the Jedi could not stand idly by and organized a counterattack, reclaiming control over Tython. However, it was later revealed that Darth Arcus had not only been pursuing military objectives but was also a member of the Secret Order of Revan, and under the cover of the attack he sought some secret information in the Jedi archive. Simultaneously with the attack on Tython, Republican forces attacked Korriban, a planet as sacred to the Sith as Tython is to the Jedi. This attack was organized by Colonel Rian Darok, who was also a member of the Order of Revan. The galaxy, ravaged by wars, has entered a new era, the era of the Eternal Empire. In these troubled times, the ranks of the Jedi thinned significantly, and Tython was ultimately abandoned. The surviving members of the Order followed in the footsteps of their ancestors and settled on Ossus. As of the year 3027 BBY, the Republic had formed an operative group to restore the Jedi Order. However, during the discussions on the new headquarters, it was decided not to return to Tython, but instead to choose a new world to be closer to those whom the Order is meant to protect. Later, Grandmaster Satele Shan fell victim to the dark plague of the former Sith Emperor. Desiring rebirth, the spirit of the powerful Dark Lord attempted to enslave Satele's mind. However, those who had previously encountered the Emperor and his manifestations managed to fend off the plague and penetrate Satele's mind by traversing mental space. The center of this space was Shan's memories of Tython. In this battle of minds, the former Sith Emperor was defeated and finally vanquished. For centuries, Tython remained forgotten, cut off from the rest of the galaxy due to unstable hyperspace routes caused by deep core anomalies. Only records in dusty Jedi archives preserve the memory of the path to this planet. Amidst new Sith wars, when darkness engulfed the galaxy and the Sith fought not only the Jedi but also each other, the Sith Lady Belia Darzu discovered Tython. Among the lifeless plains hidden beneath a shroud of clouds, she erected a grand fortress. In these dark chambers, Darzu conducted alchemical experiments, commanded an army of artificially created techno-beasts, and wove devious plans, unleashing her soldiers upon the Republic and the Jedi. But in the year 1230 BBY, Darzu's devious plots were interrupted by members of the Macrosa Order cult who poisoned her. Left without their mistress, the fortress on Tython descended into silence, and the techno-beasts created by Darzu wandered through its labyrinths, futilely awaiting a command from their mistress that would never come. As of the year 990 BBY, the coordinates of the long-forgotten but still accessible hyperspace route to Tython fell into the hands of a dark side adept named Tython. Hesitant to venture into the deep core territory, he offered the astrogation charts as a gift to the Sith apprentice Darth Zana, hoping to become her apprentice. However, Zana betrayed Tython, leaving him at the mercy of her master, Darth Bane. Bane, obtaining the coordinates of the hyperspace route to Tython, set off there. Rumor had it that the fortress of the Sith Lady Belia Darzu, who knew the secret of creating a holocron, was located there. Desiring to acquire this knowledge, Bane overcame the deep core anomalies and arrived on Tython. Seeking Darzu's fortress, he felt the dark side energy permeating Tython, realizing that the once bright cradle of the Jedi, uncovered beneath a veil of clouds and dotted with lifeless plains, had turned into a citadel of dark forces. Discovering Darzu's temple, Bane fought against the army of technobeasts, seized the holocron, and learned its secrets. Meanwhile, Zana, upon learning that the Jedi were interested in Tython, hurried to warn her master. She acquired a route to the planet from the Jedi Temple archives on Coruscant. However, a group of Jedi Masters pursued her all the way to Tython. In the fortress of Belia Darzu, the 2 Sith and 5 Jedi engaged in a fierce battle, from which Bane and Zana emerged victorious. Yet, Zana's mentor was grievously injured, and she took him and left Tython. It is presumed that the Jedi group later landed on the planet to retrieve the bodies of their fallen comrades. At the very least, the Order learned of the battle with the powerful Dark Lord in the Sith fortress. During the Clone Wars, one of the 20 oversectors that were operational centers for the troops fighting against the Confederacy of Independent Systems was assigned to the sectors of the Galactic Republic, and the Tython system was placed in Sector 5. After the declaration of the New Order, the oversectors were reorganized under Imperial militarization, recommended by the Tarkin Doctrine. Yet Tython remained in Sector 5, which was governed by Grand Moff Kinshara. In the first year after the Battle of Yavin, as the Galactic Civil War raged on, agents of the Rebel Alliance accidentally discovered a holocron called the Tython Manuscript on the planet Dantooine, which contained valuable technological information. However, the artifact eventually fell into the hands of the Galactic Empire.